Time to run through an entire French GCSE exam paper. Trust me, it's going to be fine, and you're going to learn a lot. I got a 9 in my GCSE French, so I can definitely help you through your exam. Today we're doing a reading paper, and we're doing AQA because all the other exam boards are kind of irrelevant, I can't lie. Okay, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is that you have 1 hour for this paper, okay? 1 hour, one single hour. That's not a lot of time. You need to use this time well. So just check the clock regularly, okay? Check time. You'd be surprised how many students are caught out by this. Do not run over time, okay? Make sure you fill in all the answers before the time ends. Okay. This is super important as well. So in section A, answer the questions in English. In English, you will not get the marks if you answer them in French. Vice versa in section B, okay, it's French. And I'll point this out later on, but just don't get it confused. They'll give you a reminder later on in the paper what language to write in which sections, but you have to get this right, okay? If you write in the opposite language, you will lose all of the marks. They will have no sympathy for you, okay? Let's start. So our first exercise here is pretty simple, okay? You just have to put the correct names in the correct boxes. So first we're going to go through and translate what each person has said. So, Afifa says, à une fête locale, mes amis et moi avons vendu des boissons et des crêpes. All this means is, at a local party, my friends and I sold drinks and crepes. Des boissons is drinks. Okay? Right. Next, we've got Lucas who says, récemment, j'ai nettoyé des véhicules dans un garage. So, j'ai nettoyé means I cleaned. I cleaned cars in a garage. Manon says, j'ai récolté plus de 200 € en faisant une course à pied. Une course à pied is a foot race. Une course is a race, so foot race. Don't get that confused with une course. It's not a course, it's a race. Nabil says, j'ai aidé à organiser une collecte de vêtements en ligne. The key part here is en ligne, so we know she's done this online. She's collected clothes, she's organised a collection of clothes online. Next we've got Odile who says, j'ai organisé un concert, I organised a concert. On a chanté et on a fait des tours de magie. So tour de magie just means magic tricks basically. It's not too important, but it's good to know. So you don't need to know every single word in this French paper. You can glean a lot of that from context, okay? But I'm just giving you a few translations here and there to help you out. Rose says, j'ai fait 4 km à vélo et 200 mètres à la nage. That just means I cycled 4 kilometers and I swam 200 meters. Next we've got Timeo who says, j'ai demandé aux commerçants d'offrir des prix pour une tombola. So commerçant, you should know this means merchants. And demander does not mean demanded. Demander, the verb, so if we put it over here, demander means to ask. So that means I asked merchants to offer prizes for a tombola. Okay, so let's look at the questions now. Who has used the internet? It can't be Afifa, can't be Lucas. Well, Nabil has sold clothes en ligne. So that's going to be Nabil, so we'll just put N for Nabil. Who has provided refreshments? So, Afifa says she sold des boissons, drinks. So, drinks, another word for drinks is refreshments. So it's going to be Afifa. We've already gone through and translated these, we already know what they mean. I'd recommend you spend 5 minutes before you answer the questions just running through them like I'm doing. Not in this much detail, but just reading through them so you know what each person has done. Okay, next, who's asked for prizes as donations? Well, we know this one. Timeo asked for des prix. Des prix means prizes. So we're going to T. Who has washed cars? Well, we know that récemment, Lucas says, j'ai nettoyé. So I cleaned des véhicules. So just look for synonyms. So I cleaned cars, I washed cars. They're the same thing. So it's going to be Lucas. Who has been running? So we've already translated this and we know that Manon did une course à pied, a foot race. So it's going to be Manon. So once you've gone through and you understand what each person is saying, the questions are actually pretty easy. All you've got to do is put their name. You don't have to do any translation, anything like that. Okay? Nice and simple. Let's move on. Report into French cinema. So here, we've got to read this text and say which statements are true, okay? Which statements are vrai, true in French. Okay, so first I'm just going to take you through a couple of words and tell you what they mean. So in French, réalisateur or réalisatrice means director. So here, this just means directors, but female directors because it's réalisatrice, okay? And cinéiste just means cinematographers, so pretty much a very similar thing, okay? So when we say here, cette année, the films have been réalisés, that means directed, not realised, directed, okay? So out of these statements, so we've got A, the report about the role of women in French cinema is reassuring. Let's read the first line. Un rapport sur les femmes dans l'industrie du cinéma est inquiétant. Inquiétant means worrying. So a report into the role of women in French cinema is not reassuring, it's worrying. So we know it's not A, so we can cross that out. So this year, more French films were made by women directors than in the past. Let's have a read. So cette année, 63 films ont été réalisés par les femmes, 232 par des hommes. C'est une augmentation par rapport à l'année dernière. So it's an increase compared to the last year. So yes, more films were made by women than in the past. So that one's true. So we can put that down here. So I'll put B. There is no difference in the budget of films made by men and women. So let's move on. Let's read. So, mais le budget d'un film réalisé par une femme est moins important que pour un film réalisé par un homme. Okay, moins important. So there is a difference in the budget. There is a difference. So C is wrong because it says there's no difference. Excuse me. Je tousse. Je tousse means I cough in French. Women directors do not receive equal pay. Okay, let's have a look. So, d'ailleurs, les réalisatrices gagnent moins que les cinéastes masculins. So, female directors earn less than male cinematographers. So, D is true. They don't receive equal pay. Now, E, half of all roles now go to women. In 2010, on proposait la création d'une obligation de donner 50% des rôles à des femmes. Ce n'est toujours pas le cas. D'accord. So, half of all roles now go to women. But ce n'est toujours pas le cas. So, that's not true. So, it says, it was intended to give 50% of roles to women. On proposait la création d'une obligation, but ce n'est toujours pas le cas. It's not the case. So, that is incorrect. Now we've got F. Women are still portrayed in a sexist manner. Let's have a look. Le rapport révèle, the report reveals, that que les femmes continuent souvent à jouer des amoureuses dépendant d'un homme. So continue to play lovers dependent on a man. So they are still being portrayed in a sexist manner. Let's tick that. Now G, more women are involved in the technical side of filmmaking. So let's read the last paragraph. Un bon signe est que les techniciens sont plus présents derrière la caméra. So that's true. So a good sign is that female technicians are more present behind the camera. So more women are indeed involved in the technical side of filmmaking. So let's tick G. Now H. H is not true because here we've got les écoles de cinéma français viennent d'annoncer que cette année elles ont accueilli 53% d'étudiants de sexe féminin. So they've welcomed 53% of students who are feminine, who are female. So it's not true. They are more likely to be trained as directors. So now we've got our other true statements. We've got D, we've got F, and we've got G. Okay, nice and easy. Let's move on. So in this extract here, what we're going to do is read through the text and say if the statements are true, false, or not mentioned. So let's read through the text in English. So as Francois returned one evening to his house, chez lui, to his house, a dog started to follow him. Suivre is to follow. He remarked that it was a dog, a very skinny, maigre, and dirty dog. Sale. So sale is dirty, maigre is skinny. So it's not, it's not a very well kept dog. Maybe it looks a bit ill, looks a bit sickly. So, l'animal a refusé de quitter François. So the animal refused to leave Francois. So out of pity for him, Francois called him. He approached timidly. Il s'approche, approached timidly, and Francois l'a caressé, so stroked him. Immediately, the dog, feeling adopted, se sentant adopté, accourut devant lui. So ran in front of him. At his house, Francois a cherché de quoi manger. So he looked for something to give him to eat. Quand le chien avait mangé, when the dog had eaten, he slept. Il s'endormit. The next day, so le lendemain is the next day. The next day. The parents of Francois, a bit unhappy, mécontent, unhappy, allowed him to keep the animal. So garder is to keep. Okay. So let's have a look at the questions. Francois saw that the dog was in a good condition. We know this isn't true because we know that he was sale et maigre, so dirty and skinny, so it's false. Francois felt sad for the dog, so we know this is true because Francois says pris de pitié pour lui, so out of pity for him. So he did feel sad, so that's true, so alright. P here. Francois gave the dog some bread. Well, it says quand le chien avait mangé, so when the dog had eaten, but it doesn't say what he'd eaten, so we don't know that. So we're going to put not mentioned. There's no mention of bread in the passage at all. And finally, his parents are very happy to let Francois keep the dog. That's false, because we know here it says the parents of Francois un peu mécontents, unhappy. They were not happy, so we'll put false. Okay. Now we're going to move on to question 5. We're going to be the writing questions at the end because they're a little bit more complicated. Un peu plus compliqué. Okay. So here we've got read these magazine articles about French students' views. Okay. So you need to read these articles and then write whether each student has a positive or negative opinion. So let's go to the first one, Axel. So we need to establish whether he has positive, negative, or a bit of both. So, nos professeurs sont critiqués à tort. So this means our teachers, so teachers sont critiqués, criticized à tort. À tort means wrongly. So he thinks that our teachers are criticized wrongly. À mon avis, in my opinion, they do difficult work. Ils font un travail, work, difficile. Et ils ne sont pas, they are not toujours, always appréciés. They're not always appreciated. So he has quite a positive opinion because, he thinks they're wrongly criticised, they do difficult work, and they're not always appreciated. So he has positive, so I'll put P here. Eva, mes professeurs disent que leurs cours traditionnels sont essentiels. So my teachers say that their lessons are essential. Ils n'ont pas raison. Ils n'ont pas raison means they're not right. So avoir raison means in English to be right. You use avoir instead of être in this case. Say avoir raison. So j'ai raison. So I am right. So she thinks they're not right. À quoi bon obliger un enfant à rester des heures en classe avec des professeurs ennuyeux? Ennuyeux is boring, so boring teachers. So she clearly has a negative view of teachers. Okay? She thinks they're not right about their lessons being essential, and she thinks they're boring and she has to stay in class with them. So, negative. Luan, pour tous mes profs, so professeur shortened, le métier est toujours le plus important. So for every teacher, their subject is always the most important. Ce qui est faux, which is false. Faux is false. Bien sûr. Et comme résultat, so as a result, il nous donne une quantité excessive de travail et il ne nous écoute pas. So, il ne nous écoute pas, they don't listen to us. Il ne nous, so that nous is us, they don't listen to us. And il nous donne, so they give us, so donner is to give. Une quantité excessive de travail, so they give us too much work. So she clearly has a very negative opinion on teachers. Mélisse says, un bon enseignant, so enseignant also means teacher, so you can have professeur or enseignant, doit trouver le temps d'aider ses élèves. A good teacher has to find the time to help their students de manière personnalisée, so in a personal manner, personalised manner, pour rattraper leur retard. Right, let's write this down. Rattraper leur retard. Rattraper means like to catch up. So because if we're over here, attraper is to catch. Therefore, rattraper is to catch up. Okay? To catch up. So rattraper le retard means like to catch up if they're late. So retard means late. So to catch up if they're late. So that's what a good teacher should do. J'ai des profs comme ça, mais d'autres ne semblent pas s'intéresser à leurs élèves. So I have teachers like that. J'ai des profs comme ça. Mais d'autres ne semblent pas s'intéresser à leurs élèves, ce qui est dommage. Dommage means shame. So like, it's a shame. So, ne semblent pas s'intéresser à leurs élèves. Okay? So, semblent pas, so they don't seem. S'intéresser, interested. So, she has quite a positive and negative opinion. So a good teacher has to find the time to help students, and she has teachers like that, but some are not interested at all. So, P plus N for her. Now we have Nolan. So, mes profs font travailler les élèves jusqu'à ce qu'ils obtiennent des meilleurs résultats. So, my teachers make their students, so les élèves, work until they obtain the meilleurs résultats, so the best results. Ils prennent le temps de répondre à nos questions and ils vérifient, that means check, they check, that we have understood well. So understood everything well. So compris means like understood. So he clearly has a very positive opinion, his teachers. So this next question is about two students talking about going to a foreign country. So you have to read the two extracts and we have to say who said what question, okay? So firstly, who had to be persuaded to study abroad? So if we have a look at Alice's, so she says, j'ai pris la décision de partir à l'étranger. So already, she did not have to be persuaded, she took the decision. J'ai pris la décision de partir à l'étranger. So Alice did not have to be persuaded to study abroad, okay? What about Mark? So, mes résultats scolaires étaient à peine suffisants. So my school results were barely enough. On m'a donc proposé d'aller passer un an en Grande-Bretagne. Je n'avais jamais pensé y aller, mais mes parents m'ont dit qu'il fallait améliorer mon niveau d'anglais. So, his parents said it would help him improve his level of English. So, mes parents m'ont dit qu'il fallait améliorer mon niveau d'anglais. So he had to be persuaded because his parents told him to go. Je n'avais jamais pensé à y aller. So he would never have thought to go there before. So the first one is Mark. Secondly, who is having difficulties at school? So Mark was having difficulties at school because he says mes résultats scolaires étaient à peine suffisants. So his school results are barely enough. So we know this is definitely Mark, but is it Alice as well? Let's have a look. So malgré mes notes plus qu'acceptables, je voulais enrichir mon vocabulaire en anglais. So notes in French means grades. So even though my notes were more than acceptable, so she had good grades. So Alice did not struggle with grades, it was just Mark again, who had always wanted to go to Britain. So, et surtout en Grande-Bretagne, parce que cette destination m'avait toujours fait rêver. Okay? So Alice wanted to go to Great Britain. Whereas we know Mark already was a bit like, but his parents said you need to go because it will improve your level of English. So, Alice wanted to go to Britain. So, who stayed with the family? So, let's have a look. So, Alice says, à 16 ans, je suis fait partie en séjour dans une famille à Londres. That means she took part in a stay with a family in London. So, un séjour is like almost like a stay. So, she stayed with the family, so we know Alice did. But did Mark stay with the family as well? Let's have a look. Je m'entendais assez bien avec mes hôtes et leurs deux enfants. So, he stayed with host, des hôtes, and les deux enfants, so they're two children. So he stayed with the family too. So it's A plus M. Who'd like to recommend this type of visit? So, what does Alice say about the trip? C'était une expérience qui a changé ma vie. So she's a very positive experience. She's likely to recommend it. Mark says, en réalité, je n'avais qu'une envie, so I only wanted one thing, partir pour rejoindre ma famille. So he did not enjoy this trip. He just wanted to leave and go and see his family. So Alice is more likely to recommend it than Mark, who is homesick. Well, we know Mark was homesick because he says, partir pour rejoindre ma famille. His only wish, his only want was to leave and rejoin his family. Okay. Whereas Alice was just saying, I had no worries. Je n'ai eu aucun souci. So souci, it's just like a worry. So she had no worries. Okay. Right, let's move on. So Reader's blog talks about health issues. Okay, so let's read it in English first. Let's translate it, and then we will answer the questions in English. It says in English, we have to answer the questions in English. Okay. So notre alimentation, our food. So alimentation is food. It's another word for food. Est de plus en plus riche en sucre. So it's more and more rich in sugar. So sucre is sugar. So there's more and more sugar in foods. Des chercheurs, so researchers have shown that this sort of diet, so régime, does not mean regime, it means diet, okay? So I'll put it over here as well, it's a bit messy. Régime, diet, est associé à un plus fort risque de dépression. So plus fort means stronger, so plus fort, stronger, so a stronger risk of depression. Cela pourrait expliquer, so this could explain, pourquoi le traitement traditionnel contre la dépression, so this could explain why the traditional treatment against depression, c'est-à-dire les médicaments, so medicine, ne marche pas dans tous les cas. So marcher in this case means to work. So we're saying ne marche pas dans tous les cas, so it doesn't work in all the cases, okay? So les médicaments just means medicines, okay? Medicine, that's all that means, les médicaments. So according to the blog, how has our diet changed? So we're answering in English now. So, de plus en plus riche en sucre. Okay. So this could mean we eat more sugar. That's how we could put that in English. We don't have to translate it directly from French. We actually shouldn't translate it directly. We should say, how do we say this in English? So, notre alimentation est de plus en plus riche en sucre. So, our food is more rich in sugar, so we eat more sugar. There we go. What's been the result of this change? There is we can say there's a stronger risk of depression, but in English we'd be more likely to say a higher risk of depression. So in French they say plus fort, so stronger risk. We'd probably say higher risk of depression. Okay? What might this explain? Well, we know what that explains because it says, might explain why traditional medicines, le traitement traditionnel, doesn't always work. Why traditional medicines don't always work. And I'm saying don't always work because it says dans tous les cas. So it's not saying they just don't work at all, it's saying in all cases they don't work, okay? Right, so there we go, that's nice and easy, let's move on. So now, un village africain au Togo. So this is about an African village in Togo. So, let's have a look. We have to choose the right letter for the summary of what's going on in the text. So, let's have a look. Let's read the first question. It says, pendant la saison de pluie, so during the rainy season, the pluie is rains. So, is it A, il est difficile d'aller à Kodzi, so it's difficult to go to the village, or le vent est fort? Le vent is just the wind, that's what that means. So the wind is strong, or il fait froid, so it's cold. So let's have a look. So, en été, in summer, so we're starting here by the way, la chaleur est insupportable. So la chaleur is the heat. So the heat is unbearable. Sans aucun brise, so with no breeze. So aucun means like no or none. And brise, so with no breeze. So it's definitely not the wind is strong. So it's not B, it's not le vent est fort because the wind is not strong. Okay? Et les routes sont bloquées à cause des pluies. So the roads are blocked because of the rain, okay? So we know this we're talking about the rainy season because it's raining a lot. And we know it's not cold because it can't be il fait froid because it says la chaleur est insupportable. The heat. So it's not cold, so it's not C. It must be A because it says les routes sont bloquées à cause des pluies. So the roads are blocked because of the rain. So it is indeed difficult to get to the village because the roads are blocked, so it has to be A. So we're using a bit of logic here in these questions, okay? Next, à Côte-d'Ivoire, il y a, is it A, beaucoup de touristes, a lot of tourists, B, beaucoup d'habitants, a lot of people who live there, or C, beaucoup de jeunes, a lot of young people. Let's see. So the village n'attire pas de touristes. So the village does not attract tourists, so we know it's not tourists, so it's not A. La plupart de 500 habitants ont moins de 15 ans. So the most, la plupart, so that's what's up here. La plupart, most of the inhabitants are under 15. So there's a lot of young people. So yeah, I'd say it's C. Beaucoup de jeunes, because it's not actually a lot of inhabitants, because 500 isn't a lot, so I would say it's not B and I'd say it's C. So if you're ready to start, use the process of elimination in these questions. So la plupart des habitants parlent, so that means, so the majority of the inhabitants speak français, la langue locale, or anglais. So let's look at this section here. La langue officielle est le français, so it could be French, mais le togolais ici parle uniquement le dialecte. So they speak in their own dialect, okay? Uniquement le dialecte, they don't speak in French. Pourtant, le chef, so the chief, parle parfaitement l'anglais. But this isn't asking about the chief, it's asking about what the inhabitants speak. So they speak their local language. So B. À Côte-d'Ivoire, le problème le plus grave is it le manque d'électricité? So that means the lack of electricity. So le manque means the lack, so a lack of something. L'absence d'une bonne école, so the lack of a good school, or la qualité de l'eau, the quality of water. Let's have a look. So the section at the bottom here. Un problème est l'absence d'électricité et d'eau propre. So like clean water. La difficulté majeure, so like the biggest difficulty, the major difficulty, so de développer une éducation de qualité. So this is the biggest reason here. So de développer une éducation de qualité. So to get a quality education is the biggest reason here. So although these are problems, so le manque d'électricité is a problem, it's not the biggest problem, neither is the quality of the water, it's the absence of a good school because we need better quality education. So it'll be B here. Okay, let's move on. Here we just need to read this extract from a traditional Moroccan story. So un conte is like a story or a book. A story / book. Okay. And say if the phrases are true, false, or not mentioned. But here we use the, if, or peu, me. Okay? Because what we've got to do is write it in French. In vrai, faux, or pas mentionné. Okay? So let's have a look. Adil n'était pas amoureux de Heina. So that means Adil is not in love with Heina. So is that true or false? Let's see. So dans un village marocain, près d'une forêt, vivait Heina. So in a Moroccan village, near, so près means near to a forest, lived Heina. She was beautiful and in love with Adil. Adil shared these sentiments. So partager, c'est bien a little bit, is shared. Okay? So lorsque Adil a dû partir dans un village, so when Adil had to leave a village, lointain, so far, pour apprendre le Coran, so to learn the Quran, he promised to marry Heina on his return. So il a promis. So il a promis, he promised. So it sounds like this first statement is false. Okay, so we're going to put false. Next question. D'abord, la mère d'Heina ne lui a pas permis d'accompagner les autres filles. So let's read on, let's see what this is about. Un jour, so one day, le fils du village voulait ramasser du bois dans la forêt. Ramasser means to pick up. And le bois, is like wood, or the woods. So they want to pick up wood in the forest. The mother of Heine a refusé de laisser sa fille sortir avant le retour de son fiancé. So her mother didn't want to let her go out without her fiancé coming back first. Les filles ont insisté. So the girls insisted, and voyant, Heine en larmes. En larmes. It's a very good phrase to use. You can use it when you're crying, or even when you're crying, you're crying with laughter. En larmes means in tears, okay? So she saw Heine in tears, her mother accepted and let her go, okay? So this statement is correct because at first, the mother of Heine didn't let her go out with the other girls, so it's true, so vrai. Because it's saying d'abord, so at first, which is true. Let's look at this bottom section here. So, dans la journée, personne n'avait peur de la forêt. So no one was afraid. So let's have a look. So avoir peur is to be afraid. So no one was afraid. Les filles ramassaient du bois. L'une d'entre elles a trouvé un collier. Un collier is a necklace. One of the girls found a necklace in the forest. Une deuxième a trouvé un bracelet. So a second found a bracelet. So this next question is, deux filles ont trouvé des bijoux dans la forêt. Le bijou is jewelry. So two girls found jewelry in the forest. We know this is true because one girl found a bracelet and one girl found a necklace. Okay? Les filles ont passé 2 heures dans la forêt. So passé in this context means spent. Spent 2 hours in the forest. So did they spend 2 hours in the forest? Let's see. So all it says is à 4 heures, les filles se préparaient à retourner au village. So at 4 o'clock, they prepared to return to the village. It doesn't say if they spent 2 hours there, so we don't know. So it's not mentioned. So pas mentionné. And then finally, les filles n'avaient pas peur de l'orage. So that means the girls were not afraid, because remember, avoir peur is to be afraid. De l'orage. So de l'orage is just a storm. So let's read on. Mais soudain, le ciel est devenu noir. So the sky became black. Un orage had appeared, so a storm. Toutes les filles sont parties en criant, mais Heine est tombée. So all the girls left shouting. So en criant. So crier is to shout. Okay, so let's write that down. Shouting. So they were afraid, they were shouting. Okay, so the last statement is true. Vrai. Let's move on. Okay, so here I've already written out the definitions of the words we could input into the gaps, but it's actually a little bit difficult because some of these words could be interchangeable, so we need to guess correctly which ones go in which gaps, okay? So let's have a look. So you can translate this for yourself. I don't need to translate this for you, because although this is important, it's just a little bit of context, that's all, okay? So here we've got bonne nouvelle, which means good news. On veut something complètement les assiettes en plastique qui ne sont pas recyclables. So we want something completely plastic plates. So les assiettes is plates, which are not recyclables. So recycle, which are not recyclable. We want to do something with the plastic plates which are not recyclable. So what could that be? Could it be to embellish, to poison, to forbid? I think it could be forbid. Okay, interdire. So on veut interdire complètement. So let's put C in there. There we go. And then à something. Du 1er janvier 2020. What could that be? Well, it can't be embellish, can't be poison, it can't be forbid, we've already had forbid, it can't be eat, can't be mettre, because that just means to put. À partir, that means starting, like from the 1st of January 2020, so it could be partir, yes, let's put partir, so put F. Okay. And if you're not sure about a question, use the process of elimination. So think, it can't be any of these other ones, it has to be this one, even if I'm not 100% sure. It's better to put an answer than to not put any answer. Okay, so next, ces brosses à dents sont composées de plastique non recyclable. Oh, I've missed one. Not bad. Let's go back a bit. So, pour profiter d'un pique-nique, il faut something, des assiettes en matière biodégradable. So you must something, biodegradable plates. So I think this one will be use, utiliser, because you must use recyclable plates. So let's put G for this one, because now we've translated the words, it's a little bit easier to understand what's happening. And if you weren't sure about a couple of these words, use context. So here I looked at B and I thought, empoisonner. That could be poison. Okay. Embellir sounds like embellish. Okay, yeah, that's what that could be, and that's what they are. Okay, some French words sound very similar to English words, and it's a lot easier to translate them based off that. Right, next. Ces brosses à dents sont composées de plastique non recyclable. So these toothbrushes are composed of non-recyclable plastic. So we have to something in the bin. So this one's quite obviously mettre, which means to put. So we have to put them in the bin. À la poubelle, poubelle is just bin. Finally, we've got elles vont finir dans nos océans, or elles vont something notre environnement. So they're going to end up, so finir means finish, but in this context it could mean end up, in our oceans, where they're going to something our environment. What are they going to do? Well, the likely option here is poison our environment, so B, empoisonner, okay? That could be that exercise, let's move on. Here is where a lot of people lose marks because they don't read the question, or they skip a line, or they write something in French by accident. You must translate this into English, okay? Let's say it's by section, so we'll take it. So let's first do, so, je me dispute avec mes parents. Okay, so, se disputer means to argue, okay? So that just means I argue with my parents. À cause de, because of mes copains, so my friends. Qui, so who. Selon mon père, so selon means according to. So who according to my dad or my father have une mauvaise influence sur moi, so a bad influence on me. Okay, a bad influence on me. Samedi, so that just means so on Saturday. So if you see a day by itself like that, so just samedi or lundi, it means on Monday, on Saturday. So on Saturday, il n'était pas content. He was not happy. So he wasn't happy, past tense. Il n'était pas content. Why was he not happy? Car, so car is because. So because j'ai participé à, because I participated or took part in une manifestation. Now that does not mean a manifestation, it means a protest. So the manifestation means protests, okay? Contre la pollution, so against, so protest against pollution, okay? Nearly done now. So je lui ai dit, so je lui ai dit, so I told him. We're using the perfect tense here, okay? So I told him that je ferai, so I would do, using the conditional tense, that I would do de mon mieux, so better, de mon mieux, would do better. Mieux means better, so mieux, better. I would do better to protect the planet, protéger le planète. And then ce qui me semble, this seems to me, plus important, more important than my studies, mes études. Okay, and that's the last question. Okay, so we're all done with the translation. That is one of the most difficult parts. You have to get it exactly right. But French into English is more easy than English into French, okay? Because you understand English a lot better, I'm assuming, if you're doing a French exam. Okay, so that's the final part of the paper. I hope this video has been useful for those of you who are wallowing in the despair of your French GCSE. If you need any help at all with your French GCSE, please do drop me an email. It's in the description below. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.